Hello, friends. Joe Lynch here from the Logistics of Logistics, and today I am talking to my friend Nate Johnson from GLCS and a few other companies. Nate, please introduce yourself and your companies. And there's multiple here, but and tell us what you do.
Sure. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate you having me on. First and foremost, the CEO and founder of GLCS. GLCS is a managed IT services company. We also do we also offer a lot of assistance around technology to really any logistics service provider. That can be trucking company, brokerage, shipper, or even freight tech. So our job is to understand technology in transportation, offer advice around selection, offer assistance in implementation, and then also support that internally for an organization as well. So any component through that in any way, shape, or form. On top of that entirely, we are an MSP, so we offer that.
Wait, what is an MSP?
That general managed service provider, IT managed services. So you need help with your day-to-day IT or any component of that. We offer that for transportation logistics across the board. So that's all that we do, though. So, just trucking. Everyone that works here comes from trucking. So,
yeah, before we hit the record button today, you were telling me about your hybrid status. So you started as a driver and then worked in all these businesses. Give us just a thumbnail of that.
Sure. I went to college for law enforcement and decided that wasn't going to be the right path, and really wanted to see the world. I grew up in a rural town in Minnesota. At least it was rural back then. And
not anymore.
It's not anymore. And I wanted to see the world. So I decided I was going to see the world behind the wheel of a truck, and jumped behind the wheel, got my license, and started driving over the road. Drove over the road for a little while, decided I kind of liked this industry, and did some heavy duty towing for a little while, and moved behind the desk for a small company here in the Minneapolis area. That eventually led me to a larger company that we grew exponentially over a period of time. I also had a number of shops that we ran. I had a truck leasing company. We sold that company in 2006. I then started my own company. Had a number of trucks and a fairly large warehouse. Sold that or closed that in 2009. Ran a refrigerated carrier for a while, and then I went to the dark side of freight tech in 2011.
So I was telling you before we hit the record button that people have mentioned this on my podcast, that some people are pure tech and some people are coming from the industry, actually, ran a warehouse or ran trucks. And you are one of the rare breed, the hybrids that we need. So when somebody starts working with you and they say, oh, these guys don't get it because they're not from this space. No, you're from this space and you do get it.
Correct. Not only am I a rare breed, but GLCS is staffed by rare breeds. We have lots of people that have similar history to myself, or we have people that come from the industry. So if you look at the entire staff, even our developers come from the industry. They've either worked at trucking companies, logistics companies, or freight technology companies for a substantial period of time. So we're looking for people with industry experience. And in some cases, you have those rare breeds like myself where, they sat in multiple chairs. In my case, really, I've paid people. I've knocked on doors and done sales. I've pretty much had every role in the industry at this point.
What's interesting is there was no tech to speak of 20 years ago in this space. So it's not as if somebody said, oh, I've been doing it forever.
I'm coming up on 30 years ago, and I had a card filing system that we worked on initially. So, we were
That's
literally running that. And then we did have a Westinghouse system that eventually was purchased by Innovative, which eventually was acquired by TMW or Trimble. But that, we literally would fill out cards. You had a card for your trucks. You had a card for your trailers, for your drivers. and you would flow that around the office, and you had your boards that you'd work off of. So that's where that term comes from. And you would hand it into accounting. And back then, accounting would type everything into Westinghouse and fill it out that.
Yeah. Yeah. We've come a long way. So you have some other companies. Talk about freight movement for a second.
Sure. So Freight Movement launched about a year ago, and we've been slow rolling that. So it's really a passion project of Jenny Malafarina and I. Jenny's the CEO of Virago Marketing. And Freight Movement's all about bringing the industry together. And what I mean, that's a big statement. That's a really big statement. We just got back from MATS, the Mid America Truck Show, where we had a pretty good sized booth. I'm going to call that a test run at MATS, because MATS is a monster of an event. But we're really learning, how there's one component of the industry that we really want to learn to bring together better, and that's the driver relationship, and that's what MATS is all about. But we're out here determining how to bring the industry together on in-person events. There's lots of areas, lots of spaces to do that digitally. There's the FreightX crew, a lot of inspirations. Just a shout out to Reed Laust a lot. His Please Advise had a lot of not Please Advise, but the Lost Freight, the Discord channel, which I've been a quiet member on for many, many years. It has a lot to do with what Freight Movement, kind of the building blocks of Freight Movement, came up to be. So it truly is a passion project. We do adjacent events to large industry events, and we kind of target who comes to those. We also do pop-up events in cities. So someone might ask us, hey, we'd like to do an event. We're going to bring freight tech. We're going to bring CEOs. We're going to bring drivers. We're going to bring owner ops. We're going to bring anyone and everyone to get together. And we want everybody to be, open-minded, sit down, talk about the industry, talk about their problems, talk about their struggles, and talk about the positive things in the industry too. Really celebrate this amazing industry that we all work in.
Well, that brings us to the Broker Carrier Summit, which I wanted to talk to you about today. So you're very active in the Broker Carrier Summit. You guys are one of the sponsors. Please talk about what is the Broker Carrier Summit for people who haven't heard about it yet, and why it's so important to you and the folks at GLCS.
So Broker Carrier Summit was founded by, or is founded by, Dan Lindsay. It was initially really crafted on a napkin for the better part of it, over a number of cocktails between Robert Bain and Dan Lindsay.
That's right. Robert works with you guys.
Yeah, Robert. And to be honest with you, I've known Robert for a number of years, but he works here because of Broker Carrier Summit. My first Broker Carrier Summit was in Tampa, and I started hearing about the event online, and I reached out to Bain and said, should I attend this? What's it all about? And so I attended that event singularly, and I don't usually go to events by myself anymore. Usually I have a crew of people from
You got an
GLCS.
entourage now.
Yeah, unfortunately / fortunately, I guess. So, but I went to celebrate that. I went to really just kind of celebrate the industry / I'm passionate about the broker carrier, broker driver relationship. And that being you heard my background. So anything I can do to add insight into that and comment on things, I just wanted to come and check it out. So I came down, check it out. I got passionate about it. Met Dan, met Trey, met Jeff Dickinson, met Troy Winton, met so many different people. I think one of the comments that I said coming out of it was, I think I just met a group of people that we're going to be sitting around a table and chairs at a retirement community in 20 years. And I still stand by those statements. And this is, coming up on a year and a half plus later. And we now talk all the time. So that particular group of people plus more, many, there's other people involved Don Favier from Green Screens. I've known her for a
I
number of
just I
years.
just interviewed Dawn about this. By the way, she's my third or fourth cousin. I found her on Ancestry.
I heard the interview. Yes, so I've known Don for a number of years prior, but have become much closer with Don and the whole Green Screens crew because of BCS. So beyond that's my experience, and we've grown closer as an organization to it. We've partnered with Freight Movement and BCS on our road tour, and really that's Freight Movement is an industry-wide event bringing everyone together. Broker Carrier Summit largely is also an industry-wide event, but specifically it's tackling that broker carrier relationship. It is much bigger than that when you get into it. But that is the core mission of Broker Carrier Summit, but it is much bigger than that.
Yep, and I should also say the Broker Carrier Summit is April 28th, which is a Monday, which is a golf outing that day, and then I think it ends on what is it, May 2nd?
May 2nd, Friday, which is really a breakfast. So, that's a long week. So I'm going to preface this. If you're not a golfer, you can come on Tuesday. There's classes on Tuesday. If Tuesday through Friday is long, Friday is really a breakfast. So you can leave Friday if you need.
I interviewed Dan about this, and he said he really wants trucking companies and truckers to say, hey, if you want to come for the day, come for the day. There's something to be gained. And one thing, Nate, I think this is an interesting challenge. People like you have made this industry much more streamlined, much more efficient. And we all talk about automation. Oh, we're going to automate this and automate that. And it has taken some of the relationship out. And by the way, it's a necessary thing. But now you're putting it back. Now we're saying we can't just let automation won't build relationships. It builds efficiency. So you got to get to events like BCS and the events that you're doing all around the country through Freight Movement. This is where you say, yeah, this is where you break bread, maybe have a beer with somebody and go, oh, now I get to know this guy.
You're completely right, Joe. I talked about this at Mets. We're going to take a whole bunch of steps forward in automation. And then you're going to look and say, we maybe took a couple steps too far and we have to take a couple steps back. But the human factor, this industry is all about relationships, and that's not going to change. When that changes, if that ever changes, I'm going to be long since retired or dust in the ground. This is a human relationship business.
By the way, that's I know you help people with cybersecurity. You help prevent those problems. And guys, it's not if, it's when with cybersecurity and freight fraud. So you got to get involved. You got to get involved with people like Nate and Highway and Carrier Sure and all the other people who are stopping this. But I was talking to Ann Renke, who was at TIA at the time, and then she's now at IANA, the Intermodal Association North America. But anyway, when she was on the podcast, before we hit the record button, she said, what would you do to prevent freight fraud? And I was like, oh, well, there's all these technologies. She goes, yeah, but what would you do? And I go, I'd talk on the phone to the people I work with. I said, you don't get defrauded by someone you've been working with for 5 years. You get defrauded by somebody who says, I can't take a phone call, just let's text, and they don't have a website. But they're $30 cheaper.
There's steps that are just fundamentals, and you can follow those fundamentals. Certainly tools, as you're expanding your business, are wonderful. Highway, Carrier Assure, My Carrier Portal, etc. All of those are great tools as you're expanding your business. There are fundamentals.
There's the hygiene.
Absolutely. And following cybersecurity standards as well are fundamentals. Training people, we have as a managed services provider, as that IT managed services provider, we have basic training we provide users on a monthly basis. And you need to do that over and over and over, that repetition of that training, so they can understand who's attacking you. One click, and that could be $1 million out the door.
Yeah. And I talked to Michael Caney about this a few years ago. He's over at Highway. And he said, a lot of the small carriers are one bad shipment away from being out of business. And he said, which is horrible, obviously. He said, but larger companies are one bad shipment away from losing a major account because you went with that large carrier, that large broker, because you assumed they had it covered. And by the way, there is no shame in these hacks anymore because the biggest tech companies in the world are getting hacked. And it's you just got to don't be the low hanging fruit.
Don't be the low hanging fruit. Put up your barriers, build your wall, build that strong castle so they look at the next guy. Unfortunately, you hate to say that, but that is what has to happen. You have to be strong enough that they don't want to come after
I
you.
don't think anyone working with GLCS wants to deal with you guys with Robert Bain, the strongest man in logistics, and you guys are all pretty big guys.
That's
I
our
don't want to
front.
mess with you guys.
We said that we have a few guys with that were either big, tall like myself, or they got big arms. So Bang leads the
Yeah,
crew.
yeah, you guys will get the enforcers. Anyway, one more time, who is the sweet spot for you? Let's talk about two companies. Sweet spot for GLCS, and
Someday
who's
that
the sweet?
acronym will get through.
Yes,
Yeah. So
and who's the sweet spot for freight movement? I mean, in terms of
sweet
customers.
spot for GLCS. We work with small companies and we work with the largest of the large. So if you look at the top 10 providers in transportation and logistics, we're at 7 of the 10. If you look at 50 truck fleets or 10-person brokerages, we work with them as well. And we're supporting 300 organizations on a monthly basis, and we inactively support another 200 or 300 on top of that. So we have a pretty good footprint there.
Yeah. And so you're working with shippers, you're working with carriers, you're working with brokers, anybody involved in logistics you guys work with.
Correct. And then we advise freight tech and we help them on a variety of levels also. So we're
Yeah, I mentioned TMS to you today, and I don't think we've mentioned all the names, but you said we've developed three transportation management systems in house. So if somebody says, "Hey, can you make a tweak to our TMS?" Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, typically today it's a buy and augment. So we work with a ton of TMSs and then we augment them as needed. So
Excellent, excellent. And so for freight movement, who's your customers? What are you doing for them?
largely the customers are, well, I mean, we're an open book there, so we're just pulling everybody together. Everyone's the customer. So, but if you want to run an event, typically it's an organization. So any organization in trucking, you want to run an event, you want to pull people together, whatever that might be, give us a call. You just want to support the industry, and you're typically, if you follow us on social media, you'll see our events. We're running them. We're telling you where they're going to be.
So are you looking for sponsor companies also?
Absolutely. We have, like I said, 20 some. Well, I think I told you earlier before we started, we have 20 some odd events that we're running this year, and we're always looking for sponsors to help out. We actually call them partners, not sponsors.
There you go. There you go. All right. So one more time, why is BCS so important? But please speak to why it's important for carriers, why it's important for brokers, and also when we call it the Broker Carrier Summit, there are lots of techies who are coming to this too. So why is it important for each of those three groups to be at this event in Indianapolis in April?
Sure. So the event itself. So I'm gonna speak to why Fort Worth worked out so well, which is why Indianapolis needs to be attended. There is a great split of brokers, carriers, and then there's freight tech and advisors that are around too. So as a carrier, there are carriers coming in looking to solve their network, their freight network problems. And what I mean by freight network is they're trying to fill in a gap into what they're trying to move freight in. So if they have an opening between Minneapolis and Columbus, Ohio, they come to BCS and they say, I need loads from Minneapolis to Columbus, Ohio. And they start talking to all these brokers. And by the time they leave, they've probably got some sort of option from a good actor in the industry. No one attending Broker Carrier Summit is a scumbag. I don't usually use the term scumbag. Actually, I'm one of the proponents in this group that doesn't like to put out the term scumbag, but in this particular setting, I use it. So there are countless of transactions that happen, and in many cases, these carriers that are attending are coming away having already booked loads with brokers before they've left, and these are not single transactions. Something that I always say is get off the spot market. Don't work in the spot market. Go meet your business partners, which in this case are brokers, 3PLs, etc. Find repetitive business. Find something that will sustain your business going forward. Work out something to build your business. And that's what happens at Broker Carrier Summit. That's absolutely the core of this. Also, what's really unique about Broker Carrier Summit is you have brokers on one side, you have carriers on the other. In some cases, they're intermingling these days. So, and they raise their concerns. So a broker will say, I have this problem, and a carrier will say, I have this problem. And they can sit there and talk through their problems in an open-ended, safe environment where Robert Bain is blocking all things flying through the air. But
no physical confrontation. GLS promises.
But we had great discussions on a panel in Kansas City that I ran. There was great discussions in Fort Worth as well. But there was a topic where a driver had brought up. He said, why am I getting phone calls when I have Macro Point and this broker is calling me all the time, and someone from XPO stood up and started asking questions and then responded to why they're getting all the phone calls. And then Adam Wingfield was in that group at the time. He was in the audience. He wasn't part of my panel. He stood up and started commenting on a few things. And then my panel members at that time started commenting on things. And it became a large debate. There's probably 100 people in the room. And we just started talking about the problem and how to resolve the problem, and how that driver potentially could ask the broker to resolve that issue instead of just accepting the phone calls. So
yeah, Nate, it's funny that what you just described there is different than, I went to an event and there's a keynote speaker and he speaks for 25 minutes and then you all go, oh, that was
right.
great.
And then you shuffle out and you go to the bar.
This is this is an actual debate, which is good. And I've heard people say it's really easy to go online and be tough and go, oh my God, I hate brokers or I hate carriers. And you can even do it by phone or text. It's a lot harder when you go, I went over there and they're just regular guys. They're just like us, except they own trucks and we have a brokerage. And it stops I keep using the term, it stops the othering, right?
I mean, having been a carrier, having been a broker, having been a driver, having been an owner operator, myself, everyone's trying to accomplish the same thing. We're all trying to make a buck. We're all trying to move some freight. And we're all trying to communicate. What we don't want to do is be bothered at 2:00 in the morning, be bothered when we're sleeping. Most everyone is trying to service their customer. So when you get those good relationships and everyone is servicing everyone appropriately, which that's typically the issue, is when people are not servicing their customers appropriately. And there's layers of customers here. So building that relationship, as we spoke about a while ago, building that relationship is the most important thing. And at Broker Carrier Summit, you can build those relationships, and it creates an environment where a small carrier can come and build relationships in a very hyper manner versus what they would normally be able to do in other instances. And larger carriers can come and open doors that they probably wouldn't be able to open as well in other instances. They're going to learn things that they wouldn't normally learn at other conferences. Just like you said, you're going to normally hear some keynote and golf clap. So,
Nate, thank you so much for taking the time. What I'll do is I'll make sure I put a link to your LinkedIn profile, link to your websites. That's for GLCS and for Freight Movement, and definitely put a link to the Broker Carrier Summit. And then love to see everybody there. I've heard nothing but great things. And again, I think this is a very different kind of conference because it's all about building the relationship. I guess all conferences, I saw you at Manifest, all conferences are a little bit about building relationships, but this is really digging into that tension that's always been there between the brokers and the carriers. And I think there's an opportunity to get beyond the superficial problems that we have.
I agree. And if you're thinking about coming, just join. So come on out to Indy. We'd love to see you there. And Joe, I'm looking forward to seeing you there too.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for taking the time, Nate.
Absolutely. Appreciate it.
And thank all of you for listening to my podcast. Your support's very much appreciated. Until next time, onward and upward. You have been listening to the Logistics of Logistics podcast, where we engage with leaders in the logistics and supply chain community. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, hit the like button, and leave us a nice review on Apple or Spotify or wherever else you listen. Also, please check out our videos on YouTube and connect with us on LinkedIn. We're very big on LinkedIn. And you can also reach us on the logisticsoflogistics.com, our website.